Safety Series number 16, Fire Prevention Plans. We will cover exactly what OSHA is looking for in 29 CFR 1910.39. This episode is brought to you by the Occupational Safety Leadership Podcast and Applied Safety and Environmental Management. My name is Dr. Ayers. Let's get started. So today's episode, we will sit down and cover the minimum requirements. Please keep in mind that, like all things, the minimum requirements means that this is like your bottom scale. This is exactly what you got to do as just to get by. Please don't think about this as just a presentation of how do I just get by. Think about how do I really make this work for me and for my facility. So when we get started, then the one thing that we have to have it is that it must be written and available in writing for employees, and it can be communicated early to sites who are under 10 people then. So let's go on to the next slide here. You have to have a list of your major fire hazards, and along with that, think about things like handling and storage, potential ignition sources, and type of fire protection equipment. So what I do to help out me is I just make a Excel spreadsheet and just list it right out there as I go from facility to facility. You will find that at some point, if you have multiple facilities to go ahead and tackle, you might be able to take examples and help yourself save time. But the big thing is to make sure that you have a list of these major fire hazards and that you really know exactly how to handle them, store them properly, and everything else, and just not I'm going through the exercise motion. Let's go to the next slide here. Part of it is that you're going to have procedures to control the accumulation of flammable and combustible materials, which is really a fancy way of saying trash. What are you going to do with your trash? And when you think about other things like your excess skids, like we have here, all of us have a place where we wish people did a better job of picking up after themselves. You may find a place that has like a, we'll just call it a back 40 in air quotes, where they just kind of put things and they say we'll get to it at some point in time. And so always have a way to sit down and think about, how do I get rid of these old skids? How do I keep down the accumulation of trash? I probably have to assign one person, and that's maybe not the person but the job title, to make sure that all this gets done. Because if not, trash is like rabbits. You get 2, you get 4, you get 8. It just continues to grow. Let's go on to the next slide here. Procedures for the regular safeguards of installed heat-producing equipment. A fancy way of saying, again, things like what's going to generate heat, sparks, and all that. You think about like a motor and any kind of welding, grinding, those kinds of things. And what are we going to do to make sure that things are not catching on fire? And one of the things with motors and pumps and all that stuff is you go back and do maintenance on this. Nobody likes to sit down and just do maintenance when something is not broken, but if you go back and do maintenance on a regular basis, many pieces of equipment are going to have a recommended maintenance schedule. If you do everything you can to stick to that, you will probably find that your motors will last a lot longer. Your uptime is going to be, you're going to have more uptime in your uptime, of course. Let's go on to the next slide here. So we also have a couple of other minimum requirements for employees responsible for maintaining equipment to prevent fires. So think about who's going to do your portable fire extinguishers. You may have a fixed system. Who's going to inspect the sprinkler heads? Who's going to do all these things? And for many things, it's an outside company who does your sprinkler head and your standalone system and all that. But if you have a system that's going to use something like a CO2 system, and it's going to be used for like a computer room, a server room. It's going to do something like that. That's going to be something that you're going to have to look at and make sure that things have not leaked out. They have not. Anytime you have a mechanical connection, you have a way for a issue to happen. So somebody always has to be in charge out there then. So let's go on to the next slide here. And finally, we look at the training requirements then. So the training is going to be at your initial job assignments for the fire hazards that you have. And so your company has to cover all these things that apply to you. Obviously, as you change job categories, you may have to sit down and look at trying to re-educate somebody. Not re-educate, you may have to try to look at expanding them in their brand new role. And the big thing is that you have to look at the plan for self-protection then. So in many plans out there, they cover the plans with somebody when they first come onto the job site, and then when they transfer departments, just cover the whole plan again then. But once again, it has to be a supervisor's job. It can't be something for one person who may have multiple plants and then multiple new hires and things that this always has to be tackled at the local level to really pull this thing off then. You could probably do it, but you're probably going to have gaps from people since you don't really know, you don't work there at all times. It has to be the on-site folks who do that. And they're going to also do things like as they walk people around, here's your exit, here's where the portable fire extinguishers are, here's your first aid kit, you don't use elevators in the event of fire, all that kind of stuff too. And that's it, Safety Series number 16 on fire prevention plans. I'd like to thank the Occupational Safety Leadership Podcast and Applied Safety Management for sponsoring me. My name is Dr. David Ayers. Have a safe day.